Hey.
Welcome to the Defiant Spirit. I am here with my good friends and partners in Enneagram, Julie Mouse, who you know by now. I'm not even going to bother introducing her since this is like our 20th podcast together, but I will introduce the third of the amigos or amigas, I guess in this case, Katie Clayman. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
So, Katie, I know who you are and what you do, but how about just, a 30,000-foot overview of who Katie Clayman is for our listeners?
Okay. Most of my career has been in recruiting. Okay, for the business of hiring people, and then Julie actually introduced the Enneagram to me, and I went through a Enneagram/career coaching certification program, and now want to share it with people. So that's what brings us all together.
I'm glad it does. We have a lot of good stuff that we're doing behind the scenes, working with different organizations and companies, bringing the Enneagram through what we call Business 360 and a lot more. But I want to bring it to the forefront so people get to experience not only the great work of the Enneagram, but your two particular vantage points on the Enneagram. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to do it in a very provocative way. So let me be my shocking eighth self and start by asking the two of you and anybody listening, of course, little pop quiz. The most successful or best-selling fictional books of all time. Can you guess what they are? Actually, number one. Let's just go for number one. What would you imagine the number one fiction book of all time is? What might be a
Harry
lot?
Potter.
That's what I was going to guess too.
Say it again.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter is a couple. It's not number one, but it is up there. J.K. Rowling, at least one of them is. You'd never guess this.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it's a trick quiz.
It's a trick quiz, but then you're going to go, oh my God. And that is, I built it up now. Here we go. That is 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh my gosh.
Oh God, that's what an awful, you can't say
Is that true?
It is true. Google it while we're talking. 50 Shades of Grey. And then what's the other one? 50 Shades of Grayer or something like that.
50 Shades of Worser.
So bottom line, though, I think it's sold almost as many books as the Bible has, right? Like, it's shocking how popular this is. And let's just not be so prudish to think, okay, we would never engage in that, because anybody who's listening, maybe you've watched the movie, maybe you've read the book, but if you haven't, you're also, just like the rest of us, guilty pleasures where we like sort of that salacious, that stuff of life. It's been going on since the beginning of time. It's what sells, Danielle Steele novels. It's what sells reality TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
We all engage in it because there's something that pulls us to that darker, shadowy stuff. We just don't always like to admit it. So that's what we're going to explore here. Not 50 Shades of Grey, but 9 Shades of Color.
Now that I'm listening.
Now we have everybody's attention, but 9 Shades of Color, known as the Enneagram. And that salacious, that sort of juicy underbelly that we don't really like to talk about. But then when we're in it, if we're, amongst friends, and you're amongst friends right now, that we kind of have to admit it sort of feels kind of good. And each of the 9 types has its, what were we calling it before?
The allure of the vice.
We have the allure.
Yes.
That's not to our shadow side. That's a great way of putting it. An allure to our shadow side.
And just to get into it, and when nobody's looking, right? That just feels really good. And each of the 9 types has their particular allure, their vice, their shadow side. Anything you want to add to before we get in?
I think I just add the piece that what's so interesting about learning this about all the people is that sometimes we actually encourage people to stay in their shadow side, because so pay attention as we go through the numbers. If you know someone who's like that, do you actually encourage them to stay in their shadow because you kind of like it?
Very Jungian of you, right? Because Jung's whole idea is that we all have shadow, we all have light, and oftentimes we ask people to carry one or the other for us. So like in the family, the black sheep is oftentimes the one we ask to carry a particular shadow. Or sometimes, this is why I'm no longer a rabbi, because I was asked to carry people's light. Carry your own damn light. I don't want to carry anybody down. So
Spoken like a true eight.
we're like a tree, and that's why I'm no longer in the rabbit. But the bottom line is we have to own our light and we have to own our shadow. And so we're going to be grappling with that as we go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else we want to add?
No, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Enneagram 1, the reformer, the perfectionist. This Enneagram type, well, I'll let you two. One of you maybe take the light and one of you start in with the shadows.
All right. Well, let's start with the light then, because we should all be thankful to the ones in our life that they do tend to see things the right way, and they can be such a light themselves, a beacon to what's the right thing to do. And they are organized and methodical, and that perfectionism. Talk about keep us wanting them to keep in that perfectionism, because it gets things done the right way, which is nice for us.
Absolutely. We all need ones in our lives, and we need to have that. By the way, anybody listening, you have all 9 of these energies in you. So they're stacked. So this maybe it's not your core type, your top type, but it's in you. And so as we're listening to each of these, pay attention to where that resonates. Katie, what about some shadowy stuff of the one?
Well, as we talk about the allure of the vice, so the vice of the one is anger. But you say that to a 1 and they're like, what? I don't have anger. What do you mean anger? But if you say resentment, oh yeah, that resonates. And I imagine if you asked a 1 who is really in touch, what does it feel like to hold on to that resentment? They're honest. They'd say it feels great. I love it. I love being like judgy and critical about other people and myself. It feels good. Like that's the allure of it.
Well, and do you think that maybe because they suppress their anger so much, it feels good to finally just let it out a little bit?
Oh, yeah. In that channel, like, oh my God, to come home and to be able to just be free to say, that pillow's out of its place. The kitchen's dirty. You haven't done this. Like, free to do that?
Yeah.
It must feel pretty good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And vindication oftentimes, right? If I was right, see, you got what you deserved.
Oh, yeah.
While I'm smiling at you saying, I'm so happy, or I'm really just sort of glad it happened to you, but I'm not going to smile. I'm not going to show it to you, and I'll fake the tears. So there's a vindication. I do see this with ones. Now, ones, you're not alone. Like, we're not picking on you, but just admit it. Like, come on, you're among friends here, right? There is that piece where you've spent your whole life with that finger out, do this, don't do that. And so this is the shadowy stuff of the one.
Well, and then the hiring part, that we hire them to do that. I was talking to my husband about a 1 colleague of his, and he's like, yeah, I totally know that he'll go through the details of that I won't have to bother to read now, because he will have caught it, and all these ways that you kind of like that about them.
Yeah. And they like that. They're the ones who might likely say, I told you so. I told you so. You.
Can you imagine like sitting next to a 1 at some sort of like networking or luncheon, and you're like talking about people? I bet they would have some really good things to say.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Oh, that shirt looks terrible. Can you believe they wore that? I imagine that might be a, 1 caught in its vice.
So yeah, again, the allure of that, and then really, working through that, being honest about it. This is hard for a 1 sometimes, just to be honest about what's going on underneath the surface. So part of honesty is just admitting, yeah, it feels kind of good, and I'm kind of happy that this happened to them. I'm going to work through that. I'm going to let it go now. So it isn't about beating up ones. You do a fine job of doing that to yourselves. We don't need to do that to you. But it's for all of us to kind of start by looking at the shadows and embracing and letting go of the shadows. Should we go on to 2?
Sounds good.
Enneagram 2. Tell us about the 2, light and dark.
I like you starting with the light and me going dark.
Okay.
The 9 gets to be the right one.
Well, it's easy for me to do the light of the 2 because my mom was a 2, but they're called the giver for a reason, the helper. You're so lucky if you have one in your life because they're thinking about you or what they can do to help you. They actually feel better about themselves when they're helping you. And what a just altruistic way to live your life and just kindness. So most of the 2s I know, I usually catch myself being like, oh, I need to do that more, whatever it is they're doing, because they're just kind people.
Okay, trigger warning, trigger warning. If you're a 2, please know that this isn't particular about you. It's about the 2, because 2s are the ones I hear back from whenever they read my materials on the 2 or hear my videos, and they think I'm personally attacking them. So this is not about you. That's the fine print. Go ahead.
Fine print. And also they should know that you strive to be more like them. Oh, which leads into their vice, which is pride.
Pride. Kate,
Pride.
that doesn't sound like a vice.
Doesn't everybody want to be like me?
I love the allure of pride for a 2, because you're right. Like 2s would be like, what? Pride? But if you are a 2, just think about how good it feels to know what someone else wants before they know.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
They're so good at it.
They are. They are.
And also pride in that I don't have needs.
Oh, yeah.
You have needs. We'll meet your needs. Don't worry about me, right? This martyrdom, dying on the cross piece.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it must feel good. Again, we hire them to do it because we get in this habit of letting them take care of us because they're so good at it.
Yeah, this is probably one of the types that you were alluding to before, that we enable the most to keep on with that allure of the shadow, because it serves us.
Yeah, and to have no needs of their own.
Yeah, like if you have needs, then I'm not going to get my chicken soup, kind of a thing.
Yeah. That's a great analogy.
So,
I love when a 2 will be upset at someone that didn't take their advice or didn't take their help. And they're just like really upset. And the simple question is, well, did you ask them if they wanted your help?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh.
So, but isn't it interesting when you get these pockets of energy on the Enneagram, the 1 and the 2 occupy that same I told you so kind of a space. It's really the space of, I'm right, you're wrong. Now let's back you into that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I don't want to be backed into that because I'm, the person whose life it is, then somehow I've violated what you were giving to me, what I was supposed to do. There's a lot of supposed to's. 1s and 2s are the ones who shit all over everything. Should.
Yeah. That they what? They should.
They shit all over everything, right? They shit on you. Should. And should doesn't feel good. Might, maybe, consider, think about, but not should.
Right.
Hey, can I quickly take a time out? Is this podcast PG, or can we swear, or what's the rules?
I am insulted that you asked a fellow Eric this ridiculous question.
Okay. Please continue.
I don't know if I want to say too much more because I might have just lost all my 2 clients and family members.
We love you too, as we strive to be like you. I think that's true, and it feels good to hear. So the allure is also, I love to be in that space where I am helping so much. That is the allure. And then they can also be critical of how they're judged by that. But that, I think, sums it up, is that feels so good. It's probably hardest. Well, we can discuss this later, but hardest for them to know that that's not always the best place to be, right?
Yeah.
Right. And 2s, one way out of this trap is just laughter, right? To laugh at it, as Viktor Frankl says, laughter is the weapon of the soul. Just to be able to not take it so personally and to understand that this is your pattern, this is your wiring. It's not who you are, it's what you do.
Right.
And Enneagram 3, the achiever. Mrs. Light, will you take it away from me?
Oh, I love being the light.
We're going to let you this time. right?
Well, yeah, and especially because I have one son and he's a 3, and all the rest of my kids are like nauseated by how much I love him. But um, he he's an achiever, right? And achievers just they're like a light, right? Because they're successful and their energy they bring the energy up of the room around. When my son is around, everything is just a little more fun because he's moving and he's shaking and he's tuning into the people in the room, and he's like sees what needs to be done next that's going to make everybody happier. There is this like nervousness of constant movement and constant what are we doing next, but it's fun, and he always looks good doing it.
Who doesn't want it to be in the corner of a winner, right? That's
Yeah, right.
it's
Right.
just it's a blessing. Okay, now destroy the 3s.
Well, the allure, okay, so I really want to take this from their perspective. So the allure of their vice is deceit, right? And it's not deceit like they're liars, okay? Remember that 3s, when you hear that, it's not I'm lying to people, it's I'm lying to myself. And from their perspective, the allure of that is I can be whoever you want me to be, and I'll be damn good at it. You will believe that I am one of you. And that feels really good to walk into a room and to be able to emanate any identity. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
No wonder why they look so confident, no matter where they are
That's
or
right.
what group they're with.
Uh-huh.
And then they also make the people around them feel good because they are adapting to whatever those people want.
And so why would they want to step outside of that? Right? Why would they want to have habitual truthfulness or authenticity when it feels so good to be whoever you want me to be?
Yeah, I mean, each one has this, this vindication. One's perfection, and it feels so good. And 2's, the need to be needed. And 3's to succeed. And we live in a succeeding culture. America is probably a 3 culture, and so it's talk about keeping them in the loop of positive reinforcement for negative actions. That's why you see so many professional athletes who are cheating and get caught. They tend to be 3s because we reward them to hit more home runs, and then they take more steroids or whatever to hit more home runs, and we pretend like we don't know, and then they pretend like they're not doing it, and you can just feel this like mechanism at play.
Buying what they're selling. Yeah.
Exactly.
So 3s, but it's a lying is lying. It's as an 8, I'm very sensitive to this 3 lie. And it, again, like Katie's saying, it's not that you're a liar. It's that if it's not completely true, that's just a fancy way for saying it's a lie. And when we're pretending to feel the feelings or go through the motions, and we're not truly authentically our authentic self, there's a lie quality in there.
Mm-hmm.
And 3s have to stand guard against. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Any other?
It is. And you just don't realize. So this is why it's so good for everyone listening to this. You don't realize that you encourage them to continue that lie by how you promote them. I said, I think on one of our earlier podcasts, that every time my son leaves the house, I say, I love you you don't have to do anything to be loved. I love you just for being you.
Yeah. And yet, like we reinforce them by saying other things like, I don't care about your grades. And then they come home. How did you do? Because it's like a drug. Doing is a drug for 3s. And the bottom line, not the experience, not the quality of learning, but the grade. That's a 3 thing. We got to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
Drug of choice. Enneagram 4, the romantic, the artist, the individualist, the one who is special. No, there has never been or will be another quite like you, 4s who are listening. Julie, tell us about the 4s.
Well, the light of the 4 is that ability to express that emotion, that deep creativity that a lot of us, are too guarded to express. In fact, sometimes they express emotion so much, the rest of us are like, oh my God, I mean, how can you be so out there with your emotions? But I think that, again, that they're a light, they're a beacon to the rest of us that like, hey, you're human. Hey, you feel these things too. And we're so lucky that they're feeling them for us and being out there for us so that we can look back, we can be okay with keeping ours shoved down more. But I think that the light of their 4 of being that equanimity, there's being okay with everything, and even their expression of emotion, deep emotion, low emotion, any of them is a really amazing quality.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us struggle with especially dark emotions and being with people who are suffering, and 4s just, they can show up and be with someone who's struggling, and really that person feels that they are connecting with them.
That's like a Zen koan, right? The light of the 4 is the darkness. It's
Mhm,
their ability to tap into that darkness, which makes them so special, to be able to
mhm.
share that and filter it and translate it into art or empathy or whatever their expression is. All right, Katie.
Well, the vice,
Mhm.
envy, and for people who are listening, it's not I want what you want. It's that I, from a force perspective, I am lacking what other people have. And so I think the allure, if I picture the 4 in these days, they're scrolling their phone, looking at what everyone's doing, what everyone has, and feeling so deeply like, just it doesn't even matter what they see. It's that they're not, right?
Mhm.
And that it'd be interesting to see how many type 4s get hooked into that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, right. They
We
can
call that with my 4s, because I have 2 4s in my house, emotional cutting.
Oh,
Mhm.
emotional cutting.
Oh,
Oof.
yeah, right.
There's a cutting, like they're hurting themselves by scrolling through Facebook, and it's just like they just want to feel the pain. But that's part of the allure of like,
Right.
so okay, but that's why so many 4s, historically, these great artists, musicians, all writers have gone down a dark hole, because it's more and more and more, and there's just this downward spiral that you can feel. My heart breaks even just describing it.
Yeah, but they love it because it's intense, that feeling. In fact, that's maybe why we have an affection for them, because they're so authentic. They love feeling intensely. And so 8s can identify with, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but the difference is 4s like to destroy, like implode, and 8s like to explode. We like to blow shit up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So there's an implosion and an explosion, but either way, neither one of those ends up well. And so
Mhm.
I can resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, right.
any other 4 allure?
Well, just notice if you're judging a 4 for their
Yeah.
expression of emotion, if maybe they're challenging your
Mhm.
need to learn to express your emotion a little bit more.
Yeah, and scapegoating, I think we talked about it before, but the black sheep of the family is often a 4. And
Mhm.
so we put all of this on that person to carry the shadow for the family, or
Right.
they're dark, they're the dark ones, and so
Uh,
we outsource that out of our lives because we don't want to deal with it. They'll deal with it,
yes, right.
taking some of that off of them and owning our stuff.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Enneagram 5, the next door neighbor, which isn't worlds apart if you're looking at the Enneagram. This is sort of the bottom of the Enneagram, not the bottom in a negative way, but this is where the darkness resides,
Mhm.
clustered down here. And so
Mhm.
4 and 5, 4 plus 5 equals 9, they both have this sort of yin and yang, but all dealing in the darkness of one side is emotion, the 4s, and the 5 is the thinking, sort of
Mhm.
darker side. But let's start out with the light. So the investigator, the thinker, Enneagram 5.
Yeah, well, I love this term when we call the 5 the unenlightened Buddha, because they do seem to have this Buddha quality where they are the ones that are the most neutral, truly neutral in opinion on the Enneagram. And so they just have this Buddha quality because they don't get too worked up about things either way, because they're in their mind, they can explain everything and they can find a logical solution. I find I also have a child who's a 5, and every member of our family, she's probably the first person we all go to for advice, including the parents,
Mhm.
because she's just so adept at teasing out emotion, taking the emotion completely out, unlike her neighbor, the 4, so that she can see what's a logical answer for the next thing. And so, Katie, you can take it away on where that.
Real quickly though, before you do, Enneagram 1 and 5, I oftentimes get confused because they both have this sort of quality to them, this logic.
Yes.
But that you named the defining difference. I can move somebody up to the 1 when they start expressing that anger, especially, or when it feels angry. Like an example, everybody says Elon Musk is a 5. He's not. Listen to him. He's angry. He's intense of a 1, right? Or
Mhm.
Warren Buffett, they put as a 1, but he is truly removed from emotion, and he's down here to 5. And so that Buddha piece is really helpful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, 5s and the darker side.
Yeah. So their vice is called avarice. And have you ever heard anyone use that?
No, I've mentioned that I'd like to change that one.
I think so.
Although a 5 might.
So it's greed, but it's greed of their inner resources, meaning that they withhold giving, to hold, to, like I said, restrict, hold back their inner resources. They have so much energy to give, so they want to keep it and maybe like deal it out in little pieces. So when we talk about the allure of the vice, it's almost like they must, being short with people or being maybe holed up. Actually, that's what it is, don't you think? Is every time you talk to a 5, oh, remember the conversation your husband had with your daughter about, God, it sounds like hell. I can't imagine sitting in a booth all day just writing code. Ugh. And she just looked at him with her eyes wide open and paused and said, well, I can't imagine talking to people all day. That sounds like hell. So I think the allure for them is staying in their head. They love it.
Well, and in your head, if you've got everything figured out, there's no suffering.
Yeah.
There's nothing to get upset about if you've got it all figured out right here. But they don't see that is detaching. And that's the word I like better than avarice, is detachment.
Yeah.
Is if I can just detach and not pay attention to things I don't want to pay attention to that cause suffering, there is no suffering.
Yeah, and life is lived out in the world, not in your head. And out in the world, it's messy. And when things start to break down and they don't know enough and they need more, they're the ones who get on webdoctor.com or whatever and just start researching the hell and understanding. But then you still got to deal with the reality of the illness or the person who's sick or whatever. So there's this Chinese wall between their knowledge and their experience.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I see with 5s is a scarcity mindset. Right now, I was talking to somebody who's in LA, and they said they're in the Hollywood industry. There's a scarcity mindset. Everybody's afraid for their jobs. They're on strike as we're writing this still, and people are starting to. You can feel that scarcity, that lack. It's sort of zero-sum games. If somebody wins, somebody loses, and 5s can live like this if they don't stand guard. Living in scarcity. I had an uncle, a great uncle, who was a multi-millionaire, who I use this example often. He used to turn the car off at the top of the hill to save gas, and he would coast down in neutral. And he was a 5, right? That's a 5 thing, I imagine.
That's taking it to a whole new level.
It is. Anything else? The shadowy sides?
Well, just that idea that we hire. So if you have a 5 in your life, be careful that you maybe keep them in that place, because, if like in our family, if we always go just for the logical answer instead of like pushing your 5 deeper to touch the emotion, that's something to think about with the 5s in your life.
Totally. And to not give them space. Right. They need space to process their feelings. And if we just keep coming at them and at them and at them, we're just sending them further and further down this 5 hole.
Yeah. Respecting that. It's great.
So Enneagram 6, the loyalist, the loyal skeptic, the devil's advocate, Enneagram 6, Julie.
Wait a second. Can we switch on this one?
Sure.
Because I think you have a really good story about the allure of the vice.
Great.
Okay.
You take it away.
Okay. So I would just say the light side of the 6, and I'll be brief. I love my 6 friends because I know that when I'm in their circle, they have done they're safe. I make them feel safe because I'm in their circle. right? They are the type of person who they're scanning for any threats. I know it's called the loyalist, but it's also called the skeptic. And there's lots of different words we call this number. But that's what I love about this type, that they're constantly looking out, and it's not just for self, but for their people. So their virtue is courage, is when they can really go into themselves and trust their inner voice, not just everyone else's, but their own.
And skepticism, from the Greek, philosophical understanding, it's a positive quality. We've turned it into a negative. You're so skeptical, but
Yeah.
there's a questioning and examine. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. So they're the examiners of life. And so skepticism as a positive.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. Okay. So
Stop smiling. Stop being so nine-ish. You have to be mean and dark and dangerous.
Yeah. Ram it in there, Julie.
Well, I'm going to try, but this whole idea for this whole podcast came from a talk I had with my sixth niece, who was explaining to me, we were talking about the catastrophizing piece, this when they get stuck in fear and they're just spinning in their heads, catastrophizing about the worst case scenario. And she said, I hate to admit this, but there is an allure, and that's where this word came from. There's an allure to doing that catastrophizing. It actually feels good to do it. And it's the first time I'd heard a six say that, or maybe the first time I really got it, that, wow, we really do all just get allured by that vice. She said, it actually feels good to just think in my head and churn out all the bad things that could go wrong, because then I'm less anxious because I'm doing something, I'm thinking about it. And that just made a lot of sense to me for the first time, because beforehand I would have been like, why would anyone want to sit and just spin about what could go wrong? But she described it so well. And so that's where I think some of that fear-based, they know they actually are taking control by turning through it.
So what's the pop quiz? What's the most successful TV show of all time?
Successful TV show?
Fear Factor?
Seinfeld.
Oh, yeah.
Written by a six, Larry David, and then his follow-up is Curb Your Enthusiasm. So we've built an entire genre industry around this. Just watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, and it's just churning in that stuff of the six, where the point where I need to shower afterwards because I just am so but then I keep going back for more because it's this.
And we laugh at it. We think it brings us joy. We think it's funny.
And we've thought about this and we've never thought about it. We want to think about it more. So there's the spin cycle that you get stuck in.
And again, we buy what they sell. Most successful TV show.
True. That's true. But you can see why we encourage this. And we have to stand guard against that. Anything else about the six?
Well, I definitely hire the sixes in my life. Because I'm a 9, and we'll get to that, but I notice that I get to check out more, which is my allure, when I'm around a 6, because they're paying attention, which is so not fair, which would be good for that 6 friend of mine would be for me to pay more attention, not check out. Totally.
When I go hiking, I have a friend who's a 6, and I try and be mindful to bring the first aid kit. Not that I give a shit about a first aid kit because I'm an 8, but if I don't, he's going to have to then think about it. And so I try and find ways to take some of the 6 stuff out of his life. And then I forgot the EpiPen. So it's can't win. 6 is stuff.
And I think that there's also a dualistic, I'm sure your 6 friend loves hiking with you because you're confident in the need that you don't need anything.
And he's got everything else that I will need when I'm stuck. I went too far.
Yeah, right.
Enneagram 7, the enthusiast, the optimist, the visionary, the epicure, lots of names for this dynamic, probably the most dynamic of all Enneagram types. Who's playing good cop and who's playing bad cop?
Let's go back to our natural roles.
Really, good cop it away.
Oh, well, I have a lot of 7 friends. I think at one point I said I don't think I have any friends that don't have a lot of 7, because as a 9, I just love the energy of the 7 and the fun and the excitement that they bring to me. I definitely hire my 7 friends to bring that excitement. I feel it in myself when I'm around them. They're just a source of joy. And we joke, why wouldn't everyone want to be a 7? I think they're the most want to be type on the Enneagram when you just hear about their description, because, why wouldn't you want to just enjoy life? The epicure, enjoy food and enjoy all the travel and fun things you can do. And also, if you have a 7 in your life, they tend to plan fun things for you. So they do bring more joy to your life.
Hey, real quickly, you keep saying you hire friends. Like, I'm not getting paid, and I'm feeling a little like I'm missing out on. So we're going to talk about this afterwards.
Side note.
Okay,
I'll be in the after show notes.
bad cop. Enneagram 7.
So their vice is gluttony, and not in the way we all think of it. We all think of that Monty Python character, just one thin mint, but gluttony is to fill up with experiences and stimulation, and that's their vice. And I'm sure that the allure of that, even as you mentioned, for self and friends, is very attractive. Why not just steep yourself in all of that? What could go wrong, right?
Totally.
There's probably very little negative consequence, as it seems, from doing that.
Yeah, I have 2 kids in college right now, and their friends who are 7s are just in over their heads because it's like unbridled partying, and the 7s don't have can't turn off the spigot. And I see how people lean on them for the good time, but plays right into that gluttony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We used to have a friend in high school and college that everything was always great. Let's go. Everything was always great. And we got to a point where can't be, she's fucking lying. It can't be always great. What is this? Every time I have a problem and, oh no, she's never been through that. It felt kind of empty. Mm-hmm. And so the intimacy issue started to come up for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we can play into it by 8 or 7s will change the topic, because when you start getting too close to a deep issue or suffering, and we let them change the topic, because they're dynamic, they're charismatic, they almost control the situation or the conversation, and we don't even realize we're being led down a path away from the intimacy that we needed or they needed to go.
Yep. I mean, that happens with me with 7s a lot. I actually can look a lot quieter when I'm around 7s and 8s, but we'll get to the 8, because they just fill the space up, and then I get to, go to my vice of checking out. So,
well, you're holding your own today. So,
trying to.
Anything else about the 7 before we move on to the 8? So, everybody's least favorite, Enneagram 8, the challenger, the boss, the 8-hole. Enneagram 8's got some big shadows. Like everything they do in their life is big. All right. Good cop, Julie.
So that means that the good stuff they do is great too. Like, they're very demonstrative. My husband's an 8, and it feels really good to be in the light of his adoration. I'll tell you that, because it's a lot. They give so much, and you feel so safe around them, because I've even said to Katie, because she's also an 8, that, wow, I hope how grateful we are, because we usually make fun of you 8 people, but how grateful we are for the way you make us feel when we're around you. If you're in their circle, if you're one of their people, you are taken care of. There's this safety that you could take for granted, but it feels so nice to be in the arms of an 8.
Oh, it's so nice to hear something positive for once about it.
Okay, we'll keep her.
All right, now shoot it down, Katie. Go ahead.
Well, the allure of the vice, which is lust, and not in the sexual way lust, but in the intensity of, look I even ball my hand up in a fist when I say that. The intensity of the vice is so alluring. And I'm sure every 8 can think back of the times that they have just been unbridled and pick a fight with their partner or get into a debate with someone or anything that allows them to really show their lusty self.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that word, by the way. In my 8 way, someone said to me, "Oh my God, so-and-so's husband is so intense." And I said, "No, he's lustful." So I really see the allure of being completely unaware of my intensity and just letting it go. And I actually do it around 8s.
Well, yeah. Whenever we're together socially, Katie will have to take Todd aside for a little while and like, hey, let's just get this out where no one can hear us so we won't get in trouble. And I'll usually see them be like, you two, that is not healthy for you.
Yeah. Non-growth moment here. Non-growth moment.
The other side of that, or the other piece of that, is revenge, right? That's the fixation. And I know I love revenge. I love it. I fantasize about like how I'm going to destroy somebody who's hurt me, hurt my family, done me wrong, right? Like just, yes, thank you. I want, and I'll type up the email or the text and I'll be ready to send it. And Ariel is like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll say too late, sent, and then I'll have to pay for it later, I'll have to clean up the mess. But I don't care when I'm in it, because that's a lust. And that's this like crazy loop where how are we supposed to get out? Because nothing can overpower us to bring us back to our sanity, because of our lust is so intense for whatever we're fixated on. So, for all of you listening, have a little compassion on the 8. Not too much compassion, but a little compassion.
Well, and then the way we hire them, I have a story about my husband again. There was a work situation where the person in charge, he's a doctor, so the doctors were all pretty upset with how things were being done, and he went to his unhealthy 8 and just kind of unloaded in the not the softest way. And his partners, we were out socially, and they were like, we're so glad he did that. Someone needed to do that. I could see it in action how we hired the 8. They were so happy that he stood up and told that guy how they all felt. And I said, hey, you guys, don't do that to him. He's trying not to be that way. Because the truth of the matter is when he brings his heart on board, when he comes with vulnerability, he does such a better job. But it feels good to everybody when he sticks it to someone. And that's how we hire them.
Hiring an 8 is hiring an assassin.
Yeah.
Like the hitman. Hire the hitman.
Yes.
Take him out. Yes.
Yes.
Katie, anything else about your people?
I could go on and on.
Okay, we won't. We'll give the 8s a little bit of a break, and we'll go to last but not least. I would say if you ask people and you come back in the next life, which type do you want to be? We've had this conversation. Most people would either say, I want to be a 7 or I want to be a 9. And you have to say 9 like that, like Mr. Rogers would say. And then you get a nice little 9, pretty little cloud, right?
Yeah, it's because they don't know the shadow side.
All right, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to take the positive side so we can talk about your feeling of the allure.
Yes.
Peacemaker. What else are they called?
Mediator.
Mediator, diplomat. So Enneagram 9. Okay, go ahead, Katie.
Well, I am also married to a 9, which is funny. So, Julie's married to an 8. I'm married to a 9. We do a lot of role playing to each other. What would your spouse think? But I would say to my 9 husband, I wish that I could let things roll off my back like you can. And everyone thinks that 9s are so laid back. They're so easygoing. You can bring them anywhere and they'll be okay. Sometimes they have a soft voice. I love his voice. It's so soft. Someone's like, oh, you should be on the radio. It's just this feeling of comfort, of nurturing, of, a soft place to land. They're always okay. And that feels good for those of us who are, maybe our range, our expression range is very, very large. Theirs might be a little smaller.
Yin and yang, 8 and 9. In my program, Defy Your Number, I have a musical genre for each type. And originally my musical genre for the 9 was elevator music. And my sister got pissed and she's like, elevator music. Nobody likes elevator music. I'm like, it's true, but I mean, so instead I put smooth jazz, like Kenny G. Like that was an upgrade,
That's better. I like that better too.
marginal upgrade, but yes.
Well,
So I was thinking as I was hearing Katie talk, it feels so good to hear those things. And that's exactly why we stay in that space, because we think that we're loved because of all those things she says. And so we almost don't know how to get out of it. We identify so much with all those things you said, and we think we need to do those things to be loved, that we lose the ability to stick up for ourselves, to stand up to someone, to voice conflict, anything that's going to upset someone, to disrupt the harmony. And so we just avoid those things, and we avoid those things. We don't learn the skills to do them. And so what happens? I mean, and we're humans. We feel anger. It took me about 40 years to feel that, but we feel anger. We feel frustration. We feel the resentment. We're in the anger triad, but we are so disassociated from it because we think we might not be loved. So comes out passive aggressive, comes out stubbornness. I don't know why I'm not going to do it, but I'm not doing it. And no one can reason with you. And you end up creating conflict in your relationships because you can't voice the other part of being human, which is frustration and anger and all that stuff.
Yeah. And there's a unspoken fuck you. Right, that nines convey when they smile or they say yes, I'll do it.
Yeah, literally unspoken.
Yeah, and literally inside they're like, screw you, I'm never doing this. And there's like this satisfying, I see it in my daughter's eyes sometimes. It's the self-satisfaction that she's actually in control and she's not doing what this 8 says she's supposed to do.
Yeah, you can't make me.
You
can't even talk to me about it because I might start crying.
They're the most immovable objects, like on the Enneagram. When they have dug in their heels, you cannot get them to budge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all this trying to be that story that Katie created for us makes us not think about ourselves. So we have a hard time making decisions, which can be really annoying to be around us. Like even about mundane things like where are we going to go to dinner?
But is this what I described alluring to you?
So the allure of this checking out is because when we check out and can't make a decision, or it feels so good because to come forward, you have to address all the conflict and the reality that life is messy. We'd rather like kind of check out. It's very peaceful in here, people.
Well, the other lure is, I see it with my daughter, is if you tell somebody they're easy for long enough, it becomes like their strategy to get out of hard things, hard conversation. Yes. You know, so, and then we stop asking them to be less easy, more difficult, more challenging. And so they get a pass. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's feeding the allure.
Yeah, it sure does.
I think we could say that about every type.
That it's a pass?
That we give them a pass and it feeds into the allure.
It's true.
Yeah, it's almost becomes their strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess you could go back through all 9 of these and say, hey, this is their pass and this is their pass. So, but nines have their shadows just like everybody else. Even if you look at them at first blush and you don't think they have shadows, everybody has shadows. In fact, in the Talmud, it says the taller the person, the longer the shadow, right? And sometimes the greater the Enneagram gift, the farther the curse, the shadow goes.
Well, it's hard to see where it gets me into trouble. Right. It's harder to admit. It took me many years to even notice that it got me in trouble.
Well, especially because some of them are more socially acceptable than others. Like 8s have been getting into trouble since they were 2. And I know what the shadows are, but 9s, right? It's a much harder thing to figure out the shadow of a 9.
Yeah. Julie didn't know until her cabinet doors fell off from her slamming them so much.
That's not true.
So we all have.
Good analogy.
It could be true, though. Well, any final words about the allure of the Enneagram?
Well, I just want to add that when I'd love that we got to do this, because as I go, even in this podcast, as I go through and I think about it, just gives me what I love the most about the Enneagram, which is that compassion for every person. Like, we're all doing the best we can with the way we see the world, and we all get trapped in our 9 different ways. And just to have a conversation where we talk about building compassion for each of those things and making sure we don't encourage people to stay stuck, that we help people find their other space, their healthier side.
And having the courage to look at your shadows is never easy. And I do like the Enneagram because it gives us a place, an operating system to blame it on to some degree, right? It's not exactly me, it's my wiring. Now, as I always say, that doesn't excuse my 8 behavior, but it explains my 8 behavior. And to me, that's the starting point of changing the behavior.
Absolutely.
Well, my Enneagram amigas, thank you for participating in this and making it so lively. And I know that there will be more great Enneagram conversations to come. So
Thanks, B.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks.
everybody listening, jump over to defiantspirit.org. If you go to the Business 360 page, or I think it's the Lead 360 page, you'll find everything you wanted to know about Julie and Katie, and you can get in touch with them. And until the next time, discover your number and defy your number and live your spirit. Take care.